When you're a child, you're afraid of the dark. More specifically, you're afraid of what is in the dark. Your mind imagines monsters there, grotesque nightmares concocted by your mind. They're everywhere. Under your bed, around a corner, in your closet, just on the other side of your open bedroom door. They are the creak of a board, the groan in the hall. They are the themes which go bump in the night. When you grow up, you realize such things aren't real. We stop seeing shadows in the darkness. Childhood fears of monsters, ghosts, and goblins are replaced with the fear of unemployment, foreclosure, divorce, and depression. Some people say as we age, we grow from child to adult and back to child again. In our golden years, we play board games with new friends and talk on the telephone if we can hear it. We watch game shows and eat dinner early. As our habits revert, sometimes our minds do as well. If you live long enough, you'll see your mind decay like mine has. You forget names or faces. You forget what you went into a room for. But you don't forget a nightmare. Everyone has a childhood nightmare. Some come and go without incident. Some linger. Mine was a lingerer. He stayed around so long I gave him a name. The Grim Grinner. I don't remember the first time I met the Grim Grinner. As far back as I can think, he was always there. He was a tall sort of man, impeccably dressed. He sported a white smoking jacket with pressed black pants, a black waistcoat, and polished Oxfords. His red bow tie was always perfectly matched by his pocket square. He moved in a gangly, deliberate motion, always just in the corner of my eye. I could only see him in full in the dark. Usually he stood at the edge of the doorway to my bedroom. He was always the barrier between my parents and me. But he didn't earn the title Grim Grinner because of his sense of style, no. I bestowed that name upon him because of his toothy expression. His face stood out, you see, not because of his slicked black hair or his pale blue eyes. No. It stood out because of his smile. He always smiled, from ear to ear. I mean that quite literally. His mouth was human, of course, but extraordinary in its horrible fascination. The corners of his lips were split, all the way past his cheekbones to where the ears met the face. The mouth was overly massive and resembled something more like a shark than a man. His smile showed 88 teeth, serrated and neatly fit together like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. I know, I counted them, many times, in fact, as a child. He would stand there all night with a perpetual grin. Just before the first rays of light from the sun could break the horizon, he would remove a cigarette from a golden case and place it against his lips. He then fetched a golden lighter to match from his pocket and opened it. With a flick, he ignited the flame and dissolved with the dawn. Only the faintest smell of tobacco smoke remained in the air. My father smoked, so I assume he never noticed. I felt like he wouldn't notice. He worked very long hours and was always tired when he returned home. He rarely had time to spend with me. I don't hold it against him. He worked very hard to support the family. My mother was never home either. She worked at the barbecue restaurant on Quebec Drive. I was what was known back in the day as a latchkey kid. I didn't mind, but I was alone often. I was an only child, and I dared not go outside to play late at night when no one knew where I'd be. The last time I saw the Grim Grinner, I was 9. He had stood there in the doorway with that smile plastered on his face. He wouldn't dare enter my room, not while my nightlight burned strong. I told myself that every night. Occasionally, he would turn and take a stroll down the hallway to my parents' room. He did that often, but he would always return to my door and stand. And grin. It was late, or very early. I suppose they're often the same. That night, the Grim Grinner stood in my door as I shook in my bedclothes. He turned and looked over his shoulder to my parents' room. When he looked back at me, the grin was gone. It was the only time his expression ever changed. He looked sad, almost mournful. He removed his golden cigarette case from his breast pocket and gently fingered the hand-rolled smokes until he found the one he wanted. He picked it up with his long, spindly digits and closed the lid to his case. He tapped the cigarette against the case 3 times and then placed it into his mouth. He removed the lighter and ignited it. He held the flame close and lit the cigarette. It formed a soft cherry on the end, and the Grim Grinner took a long drag. He blew smoke from his nostrils and gave me the slightest of nods. He vanished in the smoke. When my father awoke the next morning, my mother had passed. Lung cancer, the doctors had told him. My mother had chosen to hide it from me, he said, that I was too young to understand. My father never smoked again until the day he died. When I had my first bout of severe forgetfulness, I didn't tell my daughters. How could I? I couldn't remember their names to call them. In that moment, I knew I was home, but I didn't know where home was. I had sat down to watch television, and suddenly, my mind got away from me. It lasted just a few minutes, and then I was myself again. But in those few minutes, I think I was my childhood self again. I couldn't remember what I did when I had my lapse in memory. I knew he had been there, though. I smelt the tobacco burn. The next time he came to see me, I was about to go to bed. He stood in the kitchen behind me as I laid on the couch. I felt him before I saw him. He just stood there with that grin plastered on his face. There were no lights on. He took a step towards me, and then another. I backed away from him into my office and turned on the small desk lamp inside. He stood in the doorway of my office while I sketched him. I stood watch for the entire night as he stared at me. His expression never changed. When the dawn came, I had forgotten he was there. But my sketch reminded me. I saw the very doorframe in my drawing which I looked at now. I knew he had returned. I wondered why he came back to me. I never fully understood why he left. I assumed it was because my fear of the dark was replaced with the existential dread of mortality and death. Did I lose my childhood innocence when my mother died? Perhaps I did. But now, I am alone. My father has been dead for 40 years. My children are grown and live elsewhere. My eldest daughter has 2 children of her own, and a wonderful husband who cares for her. My youngest daughter is hard at work, only a month away from the completion of her medical degree from Duke University. I'm proud of them both, and they call me to tell me they love me. They want to keep me safe. But with the pandemic, I haven't seen them in person for over a year. I am truly alone. I am alone, and my mind has begun to fail me in my age. I suppose I feel as alone as I did as a child. Perhaps that is why the Grim Grinner has returned. He's here now, even as I type these words to you. I can smell the faint scent of tobacco smoke as it clings to his white smoking jacket. I hear the soft click of the wooden soles of his Oxfords against the hardwood floors of my kitchen. I know many more years have passed in my life than lie before me. As an old woman, far away from her children and grandchildren, I often think back to my childhood. Part of me has always wondered what would happen if my nightlight went out. I haven't turned my office light on yet. I'm not sure if I want to. After 79 years apart, he came back for me. When you live to be my age, you just become tired. I'm too old to stay up all night. After 88 years on this earth, I want to know the answer to the biggest question from my childhood. I want to know the answer before it's too late for me to know. What happens when the Grim Grinner comes for you?